center here we have Andrea Mancianti, who is a composer and performer and sound and media artist. And his work that include music compositions, installations and mixed media performances, he seeks to investigate compositional and performative aspects of interconnected audio visual ecosystems, where real-world phenomena extend into the digital world and complex feedback networks are established between the two realms. So please welcome Andrea.
Okay, so hi everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me here. I will try to present one of the latest projects that I've been working on, and that is also one of the case studies of my doctorate in Aalto University. And I will go a little bit into the theoretical background, although I don't claim to be at all a theoretician myself, but I've been nevertheless influenced by theory, as I guess we all are. And then I will go a little bit into the details of the implementation, and it's a very special project for me because it meant really going to direction that for me were completely novel, experimenting with media that I had no familiarity with. And so just thank you very much also for the nice introduction, which will allow me to go quicker on the presentation of myself. I just say as said, well, I'm a composer. Like I studied in the conservatory, I studied music, and then music technology, and through that I came closer and closer to a broader sound art and media art field. And at the moment I'm a doctoral candidate in Aalto, and this is the latest title of my dissertation, as we were discussing yesterday among other presenters here. Like, this process means like changing direction and title several times during one lifespan of one project. So, just very quickly, like I've been working on music and instruments, and particularly I've been interested in the relationship between real-world phenomena, said like vibration and like the very material reason that makes sound of a certain type, like why is this sound and why a string vibrates in a different way, and those kind of phenomena, and kind of couple them with digital technology, and often to re-inject that kind of sound onto the matter itself, so creating this kind of intersection. I came from a said purely musical background, but little by little I started being a little bit, let's say the politics of music are very, very specific, very interesting. They have very long histories, and not necessarily are the most comfortable. At least they weren't very comfortable for me. So little by little I try to move away, especially from those kind of things. Let's say, metaphorically speaking, try to move away from the concert hall into other direction. I started working also with audiovisual work in a duo with Roberto Fufu, which is actually here today, and we've done from more like purely audiovisual concerts to more immersive, collaborative experiences, kind of games. And then next year, my next project will be site-specific immersive experience for this specific place, which is an oil tank in the east of Helsinki. And when I started my doctorate, I guess it was right at the time when Oculus Rift was commercially released, like VR headset, and for me, like VR, being young in the 90s, was really like this kind of never fulfilled promise in a way, like something that was supposed to be there and then never be right. And so I was very interested in this medium when that actually came about, and I was thinking that I would want to explore that sonically, like, and make a doctorate about VR as a medium. And that's where I'm a little bit starting the whole process. And then, well, I realized that VR is more problematic than I thought. And then I will try now to explain a little bit why I came to this conclusion. And I'm approaching this research from, let's say, this concept that has been very, very well presented yesterday of like entanglement and materiality yesterday. A lot of the presentation were around that. And I'm here just quoting 3 books that somehow have been influential for the kind of background theory behind this work. And well, first of all, like this whole idea that exactly matter and meaning are not separate elements, but they influence each other, and they co-determine, to quote the right term. And then another concept is this concept that Dana Haraway brought about in the Companion Species Manifesto of natural culture, and the entanglement, once again, or what could be an alternative term for entanglement, since it has been repeated so many times that it starts to like demand for a new kind of but really like the entanglement between materiality and yeah, as Jussi Parikka puts it, like between the natural and the cultural, the bodily and the mind, and the material and the semiotic. And to quote Haraway herself in the Companion Species Manifesto, which is exactly a book paying tribute on these co-determinants between mankind and dogkind, and like these we have also examples, I guess, in this room today. And I found this question that she poses in the quotation that I have here extremely interesting. She's referring to a previous manifesto of her, Cyber Manifesto, but still in this dialogue with the idea of companion species, what's like companionship for man, and what is meant for the companion species. As she says, like companionship happens in pairs. It means two. And so, like Cooper's Cooper are like these tools to collect dog poo in the street, and she's asking here, what's the right kind of Cooper's Cooper for a computer or a personal digital assistant? And this seems like an ironic question, but obviously it's very, very compelling one, because as said, at the least we know it is not an electronics dump in Mexico or India where human scavengers get paid less than nothing for processing the ecologically toxic waste of the well-informed. So like she's really pointing clearly at the material aspect of information which is presented to us all the time as immaterial and evanescent. And then again, one question by Jussi Parikka, once again, how to think the continuum between natural and technology. So this is a little bit the space where this work has been moving about Also, I talk a lot about, I will talk a lot about ideology, and I'm using Althusser definition of ideology as like almost again a material element. So quoting is, and ideology always exists in an apparatus and its practice or practices. The existence of ideology is material. And I think this is extremely important, because somehow this also influences Donna Haraway, and the whole takeout here is that somehow ideology is performed within this context and within these elements. So technology itself is highly encrusted with ideologies. It's never like a neutral element that comes. So in particular, like what here one that for me is particularly problematic, and is this idea that technology has to disappear, and like it has to be invisible, it has to be neutral, it doesn't have to produce friction. Obviously it does. Obviously it does all the time, but this is somehow a defect of it, or a glitch that needs to be solved. So, and I think this is like, we see this kind of idea all the time when we read about this dematerialization of information, of data, of technology, like the idea of the cloud, and like its virtuality. And I think like it's a nice, like the whole geology of media by Jussi Parikka is really a book to tell us, like, no, actually, like all these things are grounded in materiality, in like they have infrastructure which are physical. Those infrastructure have an environmental, social, political footprint, so to say, and so like immateriality is just it's just an ideological value that we reinforce every time we accept to play these games somehow. So just to compare, and there are other, obviously, like novelty. Novelty is also an ideological construct. Realism is an ideological construct, and fidelity is an ideological construct. Fidelity in the sense of like the fidelity of the technology to reproduce reality, as if reality would be something that is given immediately. So, well, the last word is this: the seemingly immaterial is embedded in wide material networks. Information is informed by the existence of material networks, practices, and various entanglements that expand both to the materiality of political economy of ownership, access, and use, but also to the material assemblages that govern the way we are in media milieu. And this is, I think, kind of put all of these together nicely. And so what about BAMXR, right? It's hard now for me to orient in this neologism that changes all the time. And so like I try to use XR just because to me it seems like the most like all-encompassing one. And I chose this is I think one of the most terrifying pictures that I've ever seen. Nearly so, like this kind of macho man really content of himself walking in a hall full of people that cannot even see him. And so like how to translate all of this into what VR is and why it is problematic for me. This is a bit of a list of problems that it would need like 10 conferences to just go about all of them. But like, first of all, is the technology that is available to us is basically in the hand of 3 corporations. And this is like a fact, like no matter how, what potentiality this technology could have, the reality is that you won't have access to anything else than those 3 versions, 3 declinations of it. And well, not only, as said, these are big corporate actors, like, well, the military, first of all, they are the bigger investor, they have been historically the bigger investor in VR. Then the social media industry, then the gaming industry. And there are, let's say, trivial problems, like the fact that, well, the technology is proprietary, it's meant to be replaced very quickly. So let's say these are the least serious ones, already I think quite serious, but the technology is non-transparent. You don't know how it works. It performs certain things and it allows for certain things, but you don't quite necessarily know what these are. And besides of that, there's all this like ideology around it, like the fact that it's something new, that the newer one is better than the old one, and then you constantly. I mean, I think like for a practitioner and for somebody that is doing research on this, it's a nightmare also that you constantly have to reinvent whatever you're doing to keep up with the speed with which these things just goes to waste. And obviously the waste as such a like compelling materiality history, let's say, like the all this thing is basically they use materials that come from very, very complex and very shady histories of extraction, and this is, I mean, I think it's something that needs to be taken into account. Besides, this novelty idea is also wrong in the sense that, on the one hand, VR, as I said, is an old Browning. It's like, let's say, in the 90s, it was already kind of about to, but even then, I mean, the experiment around VR have been also back in the 60s, and anyway, like some conceptual pillars of like of VR, immersion, virtuality, embodiment, I can make like a longer list, have like centuries-long histories. Like it's nothing new. It's not nothing that necessarily the technology brought about, but the technology, as I see it, appropriated some of those terms and made almost exclusive of their, because of the pervasiveness of their marketing strategies. Well, okay, One for All example, 1995, Chair Davis Osmosis, like beautiful piece that where your exploration of the world depends on your breathing and your balance, like 95. There was, couldn't barely see much. I mean, now these are all very high quality pictures, but back then imagine that the head-mounted display was basically like a TV that you kind of attached to your face. And then again, besides all of these problems that I think are problematic enough, there's a whole lot of ideology that goes even beyond just these implementation. Well, this is Ivan Sutherland, which is supposed to consider one of the fathers of VR, if not the father of VR. Well, first, funny remark, the thing that he has on top, which is like the thing he has been working for a long time in the 60s, is actually a military device. It was something that was made for pilots of helicopter to see like how to land in different conditions and so on. So it's technically, like VR experimentation is directly connected to military. But besides that, he was really thinking of the head-mounted display as a way to display information, like not as a way to display information, but rather as a window into a virtual world that could eventually look real, sound real, move real, interact real, and feel real. This is apparently his own words from a Congress in '65. And I think that from there, really all the development of this technology has gone to this direction of constructing this real idea, and then like using technology as a way to go to the direction of creating an illusion of reality. And I think I found this problematic, especially when you're trying to address it from something like sonic perspective, like what do you do with reality there? I think this is, it really needs to be constructed. I'll go quickly some of the issues that, well, let's say the main strategy is so-called place illusion, or the illusion of being in a virtual place even though for sure you're not there. And this pie or place illusion is firstly directed towards sight, and that's because the technology is mainly a display. It says it, the word. Now, we were discussing this already. There are technical reasons for this. Like obviously, it's much more complicated bringing the body in, but still, there are also ideological reasons for this. There is, because the three-dimensional world, the computer graphics that is used, let's say, to host this virtual world is a Cartesian world. That it's a world of vision more than anything else. So of course the interface is an embodied one, like we were also saying this already. But the virtual body is really problematized, and I think. And the main strategy that is used is simulation. So you define a model that describes certain processing within a certain system. To say very simple. And you need to define model of perception. How is it that we perceive? So like, is eye tracking helpful? Is not? Is it making more aware, less aware of whatever you have? And then a model of the body to experience it, like, so is it one model, is it one body, is there one idea that encompasses all the possibilities there? And especially, as said, there's a corporation like three main corporations that produce this for everybody. I think this is kind of dangerous. And then, again, a general model of reality that comes with it. So this tool generates emulation of physics, materials, 3D models, like all of this is highly ideological, is highly non-neutral. It comes from choices that have been, and I think that leaving this thing unquestioned, it is problematic. Doesn't mean that it has to be trashed. It just means I think it has to be questioned. It has to be like it's not acceptable to consider this the neutral option. Now about this embodiment and re-embodiment, I think it's what is very interesting about VR, that was always interested me, is this idea that somehow when you enter like the goggles, you undergo a process of disembodiment and you feel sick, like almost invariably, either straight away or after a while. And then you re-embody in this virtual body that is never there, because sometimes you have your hands, but that's it pretty much. And your body is reinvented, let's say, on the other side. And I think that the most peculiar aspect of this technology is actually a byproduct, something that is unwanted, and is this quality of this embodiment that happens. And that happens forcibly. Your body is kind of abandoned in another dimension, while your eyes or your brain, I don't know how you conceptualize that, is somewhere else. And this is a friction that I think is extremely interesting to experiment. So I think that, as said, an artistically significant second order, like, as it's called, like virtual embodiment, should not reproduce the actual sensory motor contingencies that we have in the real world, should not make us deal with reality, but should really play on these perceptive dissonances, which can be quite violent at times. One example for all is like, I had this experience of watching a VR piece in a very crowded, small gallery space. It was a nightmare. I was in the middle of, like, my body was among people that was pushing me around all the time. And my head was in this kind of colorful world. And this is violent. And it's something that is, it's problematic. And I think it's important that that thing is not kind of smoothed out. It's actually, it needs to be put in the forefront with like a critical output. outlook. Now here, a little bit word digression, and then I hope I'm almost done with the theory part. But let's say in English, that seems to be a little bit of discrepancy between the English, at least most common acception of the word virtual. Like if you scroll on any Italian, any English dictionary, the first or among the first definition is this idea of something not exactly like something else, but almost like that. And then the computing obvious definition that like something that exists in the reality of that is simulated. And in Italian, actually, since we're a bit more backwards, probably, there's something that is much closer to the Latin idea of virtual, which technically is the same root as virtue, as like. So virtual is something that possesses certain virtues, so certain properties, certain qualities, and the definition is really much more about something that is potential, that is possible, but it's not in contraposition of real. It's a real possibility. It's just not actual. It's just not there in this. So in some sense, it's not about simulating, but it's really like exploding the potentials of certain things. And then how about immersion? Because I keep this word, although I said it has been appropriated, and I want to appropriate it back. And there are reasons for this. I think first of all, it's a broader term. It's not linked to a technology. It's just, it's more existential, if I might dare to say. Also, it works well to keep together certain artistic experience, sonic, musical, performative, theatrical, installative, which are all part of what I've been doing and what I'm interested in. And even though it is used often in the visual sense, so immersion is kind of a very, very visually saturated world, actually it's a quality that is linked much more closely with hearing. And that's because sound is immersive by definition. We're always immersed in sound, and we're always immersed in sound with our body. And hearing is very, very holistic in the sense that while we can, direct our eyes and focus it and exclude part of the field, with hearing we're always in the middle of it. And we're always like, we can't even shut our eyes, and we can't turn away the gaze, so to say. And I'm quoting here an interview by Salome Bögelin, which is a very important scholar on sound and feminism, which said, I think we need to augment this concept with the sonic philosophy, one that can ultimately be socially and politically relevant through the contingent ephemerality of its possible realities, where we no longer identify ourselves in relation to and at a distance from visual objects and subjects in certainty, but something more complex and difficult, reciprocal and immersive, invisible and in doubt. I found this definition mind-blowing. I really, really love it. And then, third thing is that immersion implies an enveloping an ecological relationship of entanglement between the immersed and the world. And I think that conceptualizing these experiences in an emergent phenomenon bring forth the complexity of this immersion. And it's like quite the opposite of something that is kind of numbing and that makes you prone to accept whatever, but aware of this immersion, aware of your relational situatedness. And also, more simple than anything else, immersion lets the opposition virtuality and reality be. There's no such dualism in the. So we go to the project part. the artifact, I don't know how to call it, is actually behind that curtain, and if you want after I can show you. It's not going to work in its intended way, because that would need very separate space and a lot of preparation and somebody to guide you. So it's just going to be exhibited like I think certain things are still visible. So this is just, the thing I'm about to talk about is just a starting point. Is a prototype, is nothing like, it will never be a product. I often get this question like, so you want to make like your own head-mounted display? No, it's really like I'm trying to make a point rather than anything else. And this is, it has been a way for me to make this point. But I'm not interested in developing these as a product. That's really out of the idea. Well, why this threshold idea? Well, threshold has very many histories again, like, well, a gate, a door, it's the place where you're entering something, it's the place at which something, some kind of effect begins to be produced, or a quantity under or above which something happens. And this is very relevant, I think, for media art and digital arts in general. And when we are using interfaces to augment the physical world, sorry for all these, whatever these are called in English, introduces thresholds, introduces this idea of passages. And they're the basis also of exchange of information, like any sensor, screen, software interface works on some kind of threshold, like some kind of quantity and some kind of, limit. So what I'm trying to do is that against this notion of something transparent and objectified, I want to bring the agency of the technology forward, and I want to operate outside of the idea of like visual illusion. So what I'm claiming is that rather than make us travel in between realities, the encounter with the materiality of this technology, and with materiality again I mean also the discursive materiality, so the ideologies that are kind of encrusted on this. It alters us. It creates for us the possibility of undergoing an experience of transformation, primarily through our body, when we interface and we extend through such prosthetics. So working in this context means to explore the material qualities of touch, threshold, their affordances, and again, like material qualities doesn't only mean how it feels to touch, it also means like where does it come from, what histories does it carry along with. And then it means facing complex strategies of embodiment that are based on those. And I'm here really claiming that we need to invent like queer poetic strategies to reappropriate and redefine this idea within alternative framework. I don't think it's enough to say we buy something off the shelf and we make something that works within that context, unless we really want to engage with all those histories that are very problematic, I think. And then, in this case, using sound and not vision as the main dramaturgic element. Well, the project started as a collaboration between the department and Aalto. It started very casually. Actually, I wasn't even supposed to be involved in the project to begin with. It was something that was happening no matter what between my department, the media department, and this department of bioproducts and biosystems, which develop materials that are bio-based in different ways. And then I remember this meeting we had with the scientists, and they were explaining about material cellulose, and a lot of really interesting things caught my attention. the first thing is that, well, what is bacterial cellulose, to say very, very quickly? It's the byproduct, so to say, of the living cycles of a range of bacteria. If any one of you drinks kombucha, that's exactly one of the species that produce cellular bacterial cellulose, and that Scooby, or however it's called, that like slimy, spongy thing that is at the bottom of the kombucha drink, that's exactly bacterial cellulose. So it's a material that is structurally similar to paper, and actually like the components inside are exactly the same, but the difference is that paper, it's made mechanically by aligning all this fiber to one direction by pressing and working the wood pulp, while in this case the structure is very random, and this has very specific sound properties. And when this interested me, so I started thinking like, can I do something with it? Can I make? Initially I was thinking, can I make like loudspeakers out of it? Can I make headphones out of it, or like this kind of thought? So it can be grown in membranes, like it basically, while they live, these bacteria produce these at the interface between the culture medium and the air. And if you remove it, it will grow again. And that's like like an endless process. And so it can diffuse sound if actuated. Another thing that I came about is that it is partly transparent. It's a little bit like a very kind of opalescent paper. But if you use it as a lens, you're not able to see through. You only see lights and darkness. And also it transforms the color in a very beautiful way. At least I found it quite interesting. So this is how you grow it. Those boxes contain the liquid that the bacteria live in. At the interface with air, this pellicule is grown, and then this is how it looks when it comes out of the water. Then it's kind of jelly and it's full of water. It's actually 90% water in this state. But then you can like create some structures to hold it, and then you can let it dry. And this is how it looks when it's dry. It's basically like something in between paper and plastic. Then depending how much bacteria is left in because obviously when you're taking it out, well, some fellow stay on the membrane. And when they work like with this material in the lab, they purify it. It's like they basically kill all the bacteria and make it as clean as possible, because then all the properties are at the purest. In my case, that wasn't an issue at all. So if bacteria are allowed to stay there during the drying process, then it might look even like skin or some mushroom leather kind of materials that have been developed elsewhere have similar outlook. So it becomes less and less transparent and have more and more artifacts. This is a picture that I took using it as a lens. I really put it like a lens on the camera and look at our, in this picture is my old studio. Those are windows. You see, maybe you see, I don't know, but like these are the windows, and basically that's all you can see. And then this yellow dominance wasn't there at all in reality. And on the other side, you see a building maybe outside of the lens. And then this is the same kind of experiment, but done with sources that are artificial, like projected. So I projected on the wall and took a picture of these blurbs of light. So I started toying with the idea of making some kind of head-mounted display with it. Like, can I do something that will make you see the world in a very, very specific way, that will produce sound within its own domain? Because also, I mean, we say sound is 20 to 20,000 hertz, and we hear everything, but we don't hear everything like in the same way. There's a lot of like parts that we hear better and parts that we hear worse. And the material, when it's excited, is kind of the counter-alter to that. It also doesn't respond linearly, like a loudspeaker that is made to have everything even and kind of pure. But it has its own quirks. So every time you grow a loudspeaker, so to say, it will be a different loudspeaker, and there's no way to control what its footprint, sonic footprint, will look like. So I started drawing like tons of these sketches, like how could it be? And the idea was really like to make something that was quite unspectacular in the sense, like very low quality, very low, but very very non-transparent in all the possible understanding of this sense. Obviously, it's influenced by early VR experiments when the medium was also very limited, and well, trying to experiment also with a specific material that is kind of has like some sustainability aspects. And it's, well, alternative low-tech and DIY approach towards immersion. And all the technology that is in there is very, very low. And it's all made kind of by hand and in a very patchy way, or intuitive. Again, attempt to reappropriate immersion, attempt to render the interface explicit, so that there's no way you're going to believe that's real. That's not real. That's you and the interface and how you kind of renegotiate whatever. So this installation was presented 1 year ago in Arts Electronica, and it featured 2 spaces. Like kind of a space in the space, and then like a waiting room. So first there's this small vestibule, like that you come in one by one. There's somebody, me in that case, that informs you what is going to happen, that guides you, that explains also what are you going to be deprived of. Because basically, I really didn't want it to become like this, now come and I will just, make you blind and that's going to be cool. So it's really like, it took like a long time to prepare what the experience is about, and you talk to people. And that for me was something also extremely new. Because I come from like kind of performative environments where usually you do your thing and then it's over and then nobody talks to you and you don't, unless somebody is really, really outraged or particularly happy, you never even have any relationship to them. And in this case, it was really like one by one. I've been there 5 days, welcoming every single visitor in the room. Then I would basically guide you in the main room, which is a room in the room made of white molten, and then you will see the head-mounted display, so to say, hanging, and it really looks a little bit like a plant, if you want. And you will have the experience in total privacy. I will leave and close the curtains behind. And, well, there is this projected world. This is how you will see, in this picture, that's how you see from outside of the thing, but that's completely different from the experience you can actually experience, sorry, not finding a better word, from within. And the tridimensional immersion was created completely cheating, because I have one projector and the image is projected on 3 walls, and the distortion comes from the fact that the walls are orthogonal one to each other, so there's no it's just a byproduct of the physicality of the space, so to say. It's very cheap. Then, okay, it was like, this I sent to Arts Electronica to explain how it should have been attached. And when I sent this, I had no idea how the thing is going to look like. So I thought it was something maybe like a flower. So I found a model of a flower and I sticked it. And well, then many iterations later, we came to this is Niklas Pöllönen, which helped me throughout the whole process and was extremely precious. this is when we were building the room, so the whole room is up to the door, but then there's these molten walls, and then we finally closed even the fourth wall, and that's how you're gonna see the thing, so that this beanbag and the head-mounted display is like kind of floating and a little bit moving, and then has this breathing thing that we could see maybe later. The technology that it's in there's two type of functional membranes, like these round membranes next to the ears that are actuated by a very small vibration speaker. It's like a speaker that doesn't move air, but it moves matter and makes matter produce sound. Then there are two bone conductors, which if some of you have these headphones with which you can run and that touch your skull, they make your skull vibrate. Same exact idea. So, but instead of being on the, so that there are these two levels, let's say, or two kind of dimensions, because the bone conductor makes you feel the sound very kind of coming from your head, from almost the center of your head, and then these membranes, on the contrary, sound much more like loudspeakers than headphones, because they're open, they're not separated, the ears. So there's this like two-layer sonic space, and then outside there's a subwoofer. Now, I apologize, I really tried making a subwoofer out of material cellulose. It just it doesn't work. You would need something like this large, and it breaks, and it's super fragile. It didn't. That was my very brave plan, but it just failed miserably. So I had to ask Electronic to provide the subwoofer. I was like, no, sorry, I couldn't do it. And then, well, the projector is in the back, and it's basically showering over you and over the walls. Then there's one laptop, 8-channel sound card, and very small power amplifiers to amplify the. So this is how it looks like. This is a close look of the loudspeaker. This in the center is the touching point of the actuator. That's the membrane made of bacterial cellulose. This is a bone conductor. I said it transmits sound to the cochlea, bypassing the eardrum altogether, and is mainly filtered in the lower end, so it doesn't really have bass, and that's why also the subwoofer comes into play. Then this is the inside. It is, as you can see, is extremely prototypey. What I want to point out is that the structure, since I was dealing with this material, then I got obsessed that, oh my god, I need to find ways to create the hull that is at least equally kind of sustainable as the rest, because I don't think it makes sense that you have like a tiny portion of the thing that it has certain properties, and then everything else is just, you know, plastic, and then you have to. Well, I think I really tried to find this thing. So finally, this is one very. It's PLA coming from 100% biodegradable filament. And then I say this because PLA is technically biodegradable. It's made by, it's plastic that is made by modified cornstarch or other starches. But the problem is that since it's very fragile, it's very brittle, people don't like that, so they have to add binders, like glues, let's say, to make it much more resistant, so then you gluify the fact that it comes from cornstarch. But there is a small Swedish company that puts their signature on the fact that this one is 100% biodegradable. It has like some kind of paper gray into it. It's really, really nice material. This is a close-up of how, this is the lens. It's basically the thing you're going to see through. As you see, like, there's a lot of, you know, veins and these like imperfections that make the material, I think, really interesting, exactly because it's not at all neutral. And then this is the outlook. You can see the filament, how it kind of created the whole structure. And then this is basically similar to what you would be experiencing if we would set the thing on so that you enter this dark room and the installation is like waiting mode. And there's a sound that you can't hear, but you could hear from the real installation. It's like a breathing pattern, and the light and the sound kind of breathe together in this way. And then this is where you wear it, and then I leave, and then the piece starts. To conclude, just very few things again on the piece. It's not conscious of goal-oriented interaction, but it is interactive indeed. There's an interplay between you and how the piece develops. There are certain things that are controlled, both in the, I even feel ashamed to call them visuals, because it's really like, it's just like, light splotches going around you. But that responds to the sound and to your way of experiencing it. It reacts to your head position and how quickly you turn, and these kind of things. So that, and then the head movement is tracked also to keep the positions, like the sound sources, in place. So it works in a similar way as headphones on a head-mounted display. Just very simple Arduino job. And then, yeah, and then there are like, it creates variation on the automation profile, so that if you have I don't know, crescendo, and then you do something, that thing gets kind of perturbed by your movements in a way that it kind of introduces more liveliness or pseudo randomicity, and that's basically it. Challenges and issues. So, well, this was what I was saying before, like, how can I apply the thing to all the design? And I really try to make it as much as possible. 3D fabrication, it's very hard to find, as said, like, truly biodegradable filaments. The electronics is the real problem. Like, basically, at the moment, and it's not only about the biodegradability, but it's really about where is that produced, where is the material outsourced. What is, like, there is now a certification, is ROHS certification, which tells you that certain horrible chemicals that would have killed you instantly are not there. But that doesn't mean much more than that. It doesn't tell you anything about where the components are sourced, how ethically the work behind it has been provided, most probably not so. And yeah, and obviously it's not something that you can put and throw in the forest, while theoretically everything else could be really just buried in the ground and it will disappear sooner or later. And then, exactly, like, companies creating these filaments also don't declare often what they're made of. Like, they say, yeah, it's based on PLA, but then there's 10 more things. And those 10 more things are not easy to scout. You really need to look for, you need to ask. And as said, this is not to say, I found the solution for all our sustainability problems. No, this is just like ridiculous at that. And it was, I think, really interesting to bring those questions to the forefront and try to solve maybe some of them. And yeah, obviously also the complexity is extremely reduced. In order, because like the 3D printing also has all its like agency, let's say, on the material. So also there's a lot of things that you cannot do, or you really have to kind of work around. And then this is the thing: the agency of this material is quite interesting, because obviously it's a living being that creates it. There are various issues. The fact that temperature is essential, and what you feed them, and I swear I try to really treat them as as good as I could, like giving like premium food to think. I know people that do much worse kind of care of this, but obviously, I mean, you're relying on living being. And also, being a living being, that small ecosystem that you create there, it's not completely isolated from the real environment, or external environment, that's as real as that. But, so it means that certain other living beings that are in the air, that you breathe every day, more or less harmlessly, can actually affect the composition of the culture milieu, and can basically either completely boycott your production, or they can take over and produce other things. Like, I got like fairly interesting looking molds. Some of them, when I showed it to the scientist that was working with me, it was like, I have no idea what this is, I've never seen this before. And like, for instance, this one, like red mold. I read is quite bad. And I think the smell was definitely horrible. And then, so you have all these, let's say, ecosystemic agencies at work, but also the material is extremely fragile. So when I brought it to Ars Electronica, I said, maybe this is not going to survive. Not only it survived also 2 more iterations. This being one. We can challenge it if we want to try to destroy them. I don't know, but like, let's say I destroyed a lot of attempts that I have done. Like, the material is sometimes, like, it's really robust, for instance, to compression, but sometimes you just need to create a small fracture and then it starts traveling its way everywhere, and then you lost everything. And it takes, I mean, a very long time to do one thing. It takes, like, at minimum, in really ideal conditions, like a week. Sometimes it's more like 10-15 days to have like really thick material. This was a beautiful other PLA that I had found. Really nice wooden feel because it had wood dust in it. It basically, you press on it and it disintegrates. Thank you very much.
Some minutes time before the lunch. Yes, we are going to have a lunch soon. Do you have any questions or notions for Andrea?
Well, yeah, I'm super keen. Hey, thanks for both being critical, but also mingling that with a lot of humor, which makes the conversation very pleasant. I'm curious how this project informs your next project. So maybe you can also bring us into what will be the next step in your evolution.
Let's say that these all fits, of course, in 5-year plans for the doctorate thing. So when I started thinking in the final kind of version of the project, I would have one project for 3 problems that I kind of that I wanted to tackle. And basically the next project would be like outside of any kind of mediated, at least closed field technological element, and it will transfer kind of the problem on a spatial level. So like what does it mean to augment and like generate sound within a very specific space that is also very iconic. It's an oil tank, so it has all that kind of oil culture behind, and I'm trying to kind of open the discussion once again, bringing strategies that would be as low impact as possible, and I'm using basically waste technology to do it. Obviously, I can't do it even there all the way. One reason is for lack of competency, like for instance the computer part. In that case, very. But all the sonic devices that will be used are basically junk that I've been kind of scavenging in the years, and or anyway material that I have at hand because it was already there. So that was really the idea, that I wouldn't, as much as possible, make new electronic waste, but try to use what I have in a space that is extremely compensated sonically, because it's a round, giant metal tank, so it's possibly like the worst possible, sonic device. Like when I went to do some tests in October, and the guy who comes that opens the space, that gives you the key of the space, was like, asked me, and it happened in Finnish, and it's one of the very few times in my entire life where I tried to have a complex conversation that was behind, I don't think, the receipt kind of thing, in Finnish, and he said like, he asked me what I needed the space for, and I was saying like a concert, and he said, it sounds really bad. I was like, yeah, that's exactly why I chose it. But it's very, I'm very interested in see like how that is gonna affect the whole chain of like, so these two elements which are in a way have their own histories, like the tools that I'm going to use have their histories, and the plays have very strong, both like, I don't know how to call it, imagination / evocativeness to it, given from the fact that it's a relic from the industrial era, that it comes from oil storage, and also because it has a very, very specific sound like footprint. So that's the next step. It's gonna happen in August, 22nd of August, when you're around.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. I think we need to go for the lunch break, but if you are interested, so please have a conversation with Andrea, and I guess your installation is open there.
Yeah, now it's not working, but I can just press one button, and at least we can see that like waiting kind of mode. I didn't like set it up so that you could actually wear it, because of the fact that in a situation like this, it would need somebody to be constantly there, and then you would need to put on like a very cute hair compressing thing so that you don't leave half of your hair inside the headset and other things. So like, there are some challenges once again. So this is just a bit more to see it, like how does it look like more than anything else. Like, so there I can play either straight away or then.
Yeah, after lunch might be the runner we're returning to before the next seminar. But yes, thank you, Andrea.
Thank you very much.